Hello people of the internet, I come to you with news that Adobe has just released Lightroom Classic version 10. Now I know that version numbers don't mean all too much when dealing with subscription applications because features get released as soon as they're ready for the masses and aren't held back for a paid upgrade as they used to be with Lightroom Classic. And of course, different companies and even different teams within the same company handle version numbers very differently. But Lightroom Classic has been around for about 13 years now, so a jump from 9 something to version 10 should be a major release with loads of new features. And in all honesty, I'm a bit disappointed with what we've gotten. Let's talk about the new Lightroom Classic version 10. I'll cover the more interesting things first. I'm talking about the features you will actually use when editing and organizing your photographs in Lightroom Classic. Because after all, that is what Lightroom Classic exists for. And this won't take all too long because there are actually only 2 new features that do that, which ship with this update. You heard me right, there are only 2 groundbreakingly new features in Lightroom Classic version 10. And we've known of one of the new features for a few weeks now. That's not to say that there hasn't been any work done behind the scenes, it's just that one might expect a bit more on the front end from a major release. The new feature which we've known about is the only one which might change the way you edit your photos. It is of course the new color grading panel, which I already covered in a previous video. Color grading replaces split toning and provides more control to adjust colors in your image. The color grading panel provides powerful color controls for midtones, highlights and shadows. There is also a global control that will adjust the overall color of your image. If you've watched my previous video on this feature, you'll know that users of Capture One will be laughing at us right now because they've had almost exactly the same feature for ages. The next change which might come in handy is that they finally added Scrubby Zoom. If you don't use Photoshop all too often, you might not be familiar with this feature. Whenever you have an image open, such as I have right now, you can press Shift on your keyboard and gradually zoom in and out using your mouse. It's something that should have been implemented a long time ago, but I'm still glad it's finally here. Speaking of using your mouse, why don't you use your mouse to click on the like button underneath this video? It really does help the channel out and I'm ever so grateful for any support. Obviously, if you're watching it on a phone, just use your finger to do the exact same thing. I really should have thought this segue through before starting it. Alright, back to Lightroom Classic. With those 2 features out of the way, we've just about covered everything new on the front end. Other things that were added in this version are tethered live view for Canon cameras and the usual support for the latest cameras and lenses. Lightroom Classic does now support the Fuji XS10, the Panasonic S5, the Sony A7C and the Sony A7S Mark III. Unfortunately for me and any other Fujifilm photographers, Lightroom Classic hasn't changed the way it loads X-Trans files in any way. For the best results, we are still reliant on either enhanced details or Iridium X-Transformer. On to the biggest bugbear of any Lightroom Classic user, performance. Adobe does say that they once again improved performance, specifically when scrolling through folders and collections. That might be the case. I do have to admit that I don't have both versions installed right now, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the new version feels much quicker. It definitely still feels slower than it actually should be based on the specs of my PC. And Lightroom Classic still starts stuttering despite my system having plenty of free resources. Seriously, open up Task Manager when working in the application and look at how many resources are available whenever it starts struggling. There is this theory going around that Lightroom Classic is built on top of a load of legacy code and would require a complete rewrite to take full advantage of modern systems which have loads of memory and many cores along with powerful GPUs, and I'm starting to believe that that might just be true. With every update, it is claimed that they've made Lightroom Classic faster and more responsive, but never has an update made me say, whoa, this really is a lot faster. It's good to see that Lightroom Classic is getting new features, but I do fear that it will be slowly phased out in favor of the new Lightroom at some point in the future. However, a performance improvement which will not go unnoticed is the update to linear and radial gradients, the brush tool, and the adjustments of multiple sliders for local corrections. These are now all GPU accelerated. If you've got a decent GPU and GPU acceleration is enabled, you should be seeing a noticeable improvement. It's good to see Adobe further working on GPU acceleration, because Lightroom Classic definitely has room for improvement in that area. And despite these options now have been added, there is still loads more a GPU could do for Lightroom Classic. And that is Lightroom Classic version 10. There really is nothing more worthy of note. It's an okay update if you ask me. I was hoping for more, but I'll take whatever I get. Let me know down in the comments what feature you want to see added next to Lightroom Classic. I'm genuinely curious to know. I could end it here, but I do want to finish off this video on a positive note, and just coincidentally I do have some rather interesting news. This is coming from the Director of Product Management responsible for Lightroom at Adobe. In a Reddit thread, they confirmed that the developers at Adobe are working on better multi-core support, great, allowing Lightroom Classic to take advantage of available RAM, fantastic, and GPU acceleration for exports, fabulous. As always, thank you very much for watching my video, you wonderful person. If you enjoy my content, please do consider subscribing to my channel and make sure to like any video that does tickle your fancy. Alright, that's been enough from me for one day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.